You're looking for a triple guitar hanging stand. Pretty specific, right? On one hand, you have the simple on-stage stands GS432BPlus for $44, but on the other hand, you have the Hercules GS432BPlus for $111. Just by looking at the price, you think the Hercules is a better stand, but is it worth 2.5 times the cost of the on-stage? Let's find out. What is up, everyone? Man Metalhead here. If you have more stand spaces than you do guitars, like and subscribe. With that uncomfortable mess behind us, let's get into these two stands. You may have noticed this onstage stand has a little wear and tear. I've had the stand for at least 10 years and I've taken it to a few dozen gigs. As you can tell, it's held up pretty well. I've had this Hercules stand for a few weeks now and I've only taken it to 2 gigs, so I can't personally speak to the longevity of the stand, but the other guitarist in my band has had the same stand for 6 or 7 years and it's still going strong. I also know a few other musicians who use this stand and highly recommend it, which is why I picked it up. I'm going to be as exhaustive as I can while comparing these two stands. I'll compare individual components, closing and opening of the stands, what types of instruments and combinations they can hold, and even how far they can tip before falling over, also with different instrument combos. I've set up chapters, so feel free to jump around. Obviously, both stands have 3 hangers to hang up to 3 instruments, and they both have a backrest for each instrument. Both can hold electric, acoustic, and bass guitars, and in different combinations, but I'll go more into that later in the video. The Hercules stand can also hold small instruments like mandolins or banjos using the narrow instrument neck adjustment. One of these is included with the stand. Unfortunately, as far as I know, there is no similar option for the onstage stand. Each brand does offer different varieties of these hanging stands with backrests holding a different number of instruments. The onstage has a double option. Hercules offers stands holding 1, 2, or even 6 instruments. I haven't used any of these other variations, but I would be willing to bet they are similar to these triple stands. Well, maybe not the 6 guitar stand. There certainly are similarities, but it is a little more complicated, so just keep that in mind. Oh, and I have affiliate links to all these stands in the description. The onstage stands between 35 and 42 inches tall, the Hercules between 32 and 47 inches. Closed, the onstage stand is about 33 inches tall and fits in about a 5-inch circle, the Hercules 30 inches tall in a 6-inch circle. Since these stands are so similar in form and function, we're going to compare each component, starting with the onstage hangers. They fold down, the shaft is a metal tube, the U-shaped yoke is made of solid metal and is welded to the shaft. It is covered in a thick foam. The Hercules hangers fold up and lock into place with a metal sleeve. The shaft is made of 2 pieces, both solid metal. The outside of the yoke is plastic with thick foam on the sides and thinner foam on the back. The little I can see of the inside, there's a mix of metal and plastic. One obvious difference between the hangers is the Hercules is auto-locking, whereas the onstage is not. When you place a guitar on the yoke, the weight of the guitar will cause the 2 wipers to flip up, helping to prevent the guitar from coming out. The ends of the yoke on the onstage stand are curved up, helping to prevent the guitar from coming out. The Hercules auto-locking mechanism gives you more peace of mind, but I've never had a guitar come out of the onstage yoke in all the years I've used it. I should also mention the foam on both stands is more than sufficient for protecting the finish and or bare wood of your guitar. Next, let's look at height adjustment. Both have upper and lower support poles, all made of metal tubes. The onstage stand uses a screw mechanism to hold the height. The upper support pole also has a groove for the screw to align the hangers and backrests. Simply set your height and tighten the screw. It doesn't take much torque to lock it into place. The Hercules stand uses a clutch mechanism with a locking pin. There are 14 preset heights where the locking pin fits inside a hole in the upper support pole. As you might expect, the height adjustment on the Hercules is much easier to set up, not only when first setting it up, but also when making height adjustments. I'm confident in changing the height with guitars on the hangers as long as I hold the center rod. If you decide to do this, just be very careful. When setting up the onstage stand, you must loosen the screw, slide it into place, then tighten the screw. Because of that alignment groove, you must screw it in quite a bit more, which takes a little more time and is a little annoying. I should also point out that the upper support pole on the onstage can be removed from the lower support pole. This is not the case with the Hercules. You can see I have a piece of tape on the onstage so I can correctly set the height each time. Otherwise, I'd usually pull the upper support out. This is not necessary for the Hercules because I can't remove the upper pole and the locking pinholes make setting the height much easier. Moving on to the backrests. The onstage backrests fold down and their height is in a fixed position. They are made of 2 metal tubes with the rest itself covered in a thick foam. The Hercules backrests are connected to a ring which sits loosely around the lower support pole. Lowering the backrest will place pressure onto the support pole, helping to prevent the ring from falling. You can still rotate the backrests when they are down. The backrest shafts are made of 2 pieces of solid metal welded to a metal tube and covered in a thick foam. The biggest difference between the backrest on these stands is the height adjustability of the Hercules, but we'll dive deeper into that later. Last, let's look at the legs. The legs on the onstage simply swing up when the stand is in use and down when transporting. The Hercules legs are connected to a hub with a tension knob and support arms. The Hercules leg design is definitely nicer and in the end more reliable, but I've never had an issue with legs failing on the onstage stand. That covers all the components of these stands and how they work, but let's see how they look when they are folded up. With the onstage stand, the hangers fold up and hold their position pretty well. Same goes for the backrest. To slide the upper support pole down, loosen the screw and slide the pole down. In order to get the stand to its smallest size, about 16 inches smaller, you'll have to unscrew the knob quite a bit more because the groove in the upper support pole does not go all the way up. Finally, the legs simply fold in. This is probably one of the most annoying parts of the stand. These legs do not lock into place, so carrying it around can be very irritating. And when you're trying to quickly set up or tear down after a gig, you may want to throw the stand against the wall. I would recommend immediately putting the stand into a bag. To close the Hercules stand, pulling the locking sleeve on the hanger will let the yoke drop. There's a piece the locking sleeve will fit into which will prevent the yoke from swinging around. Pressing the clutch button quickly drops the upper support pole. To fold the legs, unscrew the tension knob and slide the hub up. Tightening the tension knob isn't necessary here since the hub is unlikely to slide down. The backrest will simply fold up, but you can see that they are now loose. When fully closed, they don't have a lot of room to move up and down the support pole, but they will wiggle back and forth a little. Not enough to fully go down to the lock position, so it's probably not a big deal, but they could be accidentally pulled up if they get caught on something. Like the onstage, placing it into a bag helps with any issues. Of course, Hercules sells a bag. I would definitely take the slightly loose breast on the Hercules over the legs on the onstage that absolutely have no desire to stay closed. Let's see how long these stands take to set up and tear down. When setting up the stands, the onstage gets slowed down by the locking screw on the support poles because it sits in that groove on the inner pole and must be turned in quite a bit. The Hercules gets a little slowed down by the tripod tension knob, but it doesn't need nearly as much time as the onstage. The Hercules is a clear winner here, setting up in 9.4 seconds, whereas the onstage is set up in 13.2 seconds. Tearing the stands down is a closer battle. Both are slowed down by their respective knobs, but the Hercules edges the other out with 8.7 seconds compared to the onstage's 10.2 seconds. For each setup and teardown, the Hercules will save you a total of 5.3 seconds. If you have to set these stands up once a week, in a year you'll save 4.6 minutes, and in 10 years, 46 minutes. Yeah, not the biggest time-saving investment. However, I will say the Hercules is a more pleasing stand to set up and tear down. The automatic locking yokes, rest, and height adjustment really make for a better experience. The onstage just feels a little more clumsy. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, both these stands can hold electric, acoustic, and bass guitars. Both even hold my wider neck of the 7-string, but it's a little tight on the onstage yoke. It's easier to turn the neck while placing it into the yoke or taking it out. The Hercules yoke is wide enough so you don't need to worry about that. In order to fit a full-size bass guitar, you'll have to fully extend each stand. If you want to place a different size instrument on the stand, it's definitely possible with both, but a little more tricky with the onstage. Since the backrests on the Hercules are adjustable, you can place them pretty high so they easily support electrics, acoustics, and other basses. Since the backrests on the onstage are not adjustable, you're stuck with what you have. Fortunately, at a height that will fit a bass, the backrests barely support an electric guitar. While this is probably fine for most normal electrics, odd-shaped or shorter guitars might not be supported, like my Randy Rose V. I could lower the upper support pole, but then my bass is dangerously close to the leg under it. I could also angle out the backrest, but then the guitar will be slightly closer to the other guitars on the stand, which could cause an accidental bump. Not an issue if you have the double guitar variant. As far as guitar retention, both these stands are great. I'm not going to worry about guitars falling, even if the stands are bumped. But what if they are bumped so hard they tip over? Well, that's easy enough to find out. I went ahead and did some experiments where I loaded the stands up to see how far they would tip before they would begin to fall over. I did this test with different guitars loaded on the stands, but I kept the stands at their maximum height for consistency. Starting with the best case scenario, 2 guitars roughly the same weight and a heavy bass guitar opposite the way the stand is tipping. The onstage will tip about 15.2 degrees before it would fall over, and the Hercules 15.7 degrees. The Hercules has a slight lead here, but let's be honest, this isn't a perfect test, so I say they're pretty much the same. What if we have 3 guitars roughly the same weight? Here the onstage tips 13.4 degrees and the Hercules 13 degrees. The onstage wins here, but again, they're pretty much the same. Now on the opposite side of the tipping direction, let's put something lighter, like an acoustic guitar. The onstage tips 12.1 degrees and the Hercules 12.5 degrees. Again, pretty much the same. Seeing a pattern? Might as well try one more, the worst case scenario. I'll put only 2 of my heaviest guitars on the stand, my bass and Warmoth Les Paul, and tip them away from the unloaded side. In this case, the onstage tips 10.9 degrees and the Hercules 8 degrees. Finally, a considerable difference. For the price, I didn't think the onstage would perform better than the Hercules. I think it's because the Hercules sits higher, creating a greater moment when tipped. Whichever way these results came out, it's a good idea to load either of these stands with 3 instruments if possible. Of course, the big question, which stand should you buy? Obviously, it depends on your use case and budget. If your budget is no option, I would go with the Hercules. If you're never or rarely going to have to fold up the stand and transport it, I'd go with the onstage. But if you expect to hold the guitars and basses at the same time, the Hercules is probably the better option. And if you're a gigging musician that is going to need to pack up the stand every weekend, definitely go with the Hercules. Me, I'll be keeping the onstage at home and gig with the Hercules. Honestly, I have so many stands and wall mount hangers that the Hercules will probably just stay in the bag unless I'm gigging. Hopefully this video helped you out. Like always, like and subscribe. But hey, until next time, rock on.